Alright, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Eatin Cheap. Today's episode is going to be baked sliders. Today, you'll need some rolls. In this case, I got the Sam's Choice Sweet Hawaiians just because of the meat and cheeses that I got. I like it a little bit sweeter. I got a pack of sliced medium cheddar. And I like to go kind of heavy on the meat, so I got a couple packs of honey turkey breast and some sour cream. Of course, in this situation, you don't have to use as much meat. Of course, it did make it more expensive. These were $3 each, so the total meal, this was about $2, and the Hawaiian rolls were about $2. So with these specific ingredients, the total meal is about $13. And depending on how many sliders you can eat, this will probably feed about 3 people. 3 people if you get 4 each. So not a bad amount. Of course, meat's expensive, so it's kind of hard to eat super cheap on that. But I think I did an alright job. So our first step, I've got the oven preheating to 300. That will be the final step in the rings. So we're just going to go ahead and take this out, put it on my, as always, aluminum foil lined sheet pan here. Now, another thing that's kind of nice here is I'm using one that's not very deep. That way, when I take my knife, a bread knife would be better, but mine's currently dirty, so I'm going to use this. You want to take it as close to the edge as possible. You just got to make sure that the knife is long enough to cover the full length of the bread. And then, using that as a guide, you can split it in half. Just be very careful not to cut yourself. And voila, we have an almost perfectly split in half bread. Now, this is probably one of my easiest recipes I've got, just because while the bake time still is about 20 or so minutes, depending on how hard or how crusty and such you want it. This is an extremely, this is the type of recipe a 2-year-old could do, so long as, of course, they're safe with the utensils. So I'm just going to open up that sour cream. Grab myself a spatula. A rubber spatula, rubber scraper, and I'm just gonna, now this is an 8-ounce tub of sour cream. I could have made the sour cream a little bit cheaper by getting the Great Value. Personally, I think that there's too much of a taste difference. Daisy sour cream is the best sour cream. You want to use, I personally use about half of the tub per round of rolls, depending on how many you end up making. Like, let's say you're going to a party, you're not going to make just one of this. So you just want to spread it on there just enough to where the bottom is saturated but not thick. So you just want to get a nice layer. You don't want to overdo it, just because at that point it'll make the bottom of it all soggy, and that's not the goal here. Not many people like soggy bread. So now that that's done, we simply assemble the sandwich. Undo cheese, open up the meats. Like I said, I'm using a full pound. In this specific case, I'm using honey turkey and medium cheddar, a pound of the meat, and 1.5 pounds of the cheese. I could do a lot more of either, especially if I'm going to make multiple batches, but I didn't really want to go too super heavy on the cheese right now. So you're just going to want to layer each slice. You don't want it to be super balled up, just because then you'll start getting bites that are a lot heavier on the meat than the others, and you'll start getting pieces that just generally don't feel as good as the last bite. Just want to make probably 3 or 4 layers there. If you use multiple different types of meats and cheeses, one good thing that you can do is you can set a layer of each, kind of like how you would make, a lasagna. So like a layer of turkey, a layer of, so like meat, cheese, new cheese, and just keep following that recipe. I underestimated how much 1/2 pound of meat is, so I'm going to save this one for later. This has now been updated to a $10 for 3 or so people. I should have opened the cheese first, because now my hands are slightly slimy. And that's when you bring the knife back. Just poke a little hole in her to open her up. Nothing scientific about home cooking. Just do what you can, and people will appreciate it. Now, 12 slices for this is probably a little heavy. So, when I said I wasn't going to go heavy on the cheese, I lied. I'm going to use all 12 of these bad boys. And you want to tessellate it just like you did with the meat. Have a nice even flat layer. And then you just want to replace the top as best you can. If it falls apart, it's fine, because the meat will still, put that on the wrong side. The meat and cheese and everything is still going to work. So, we want this as centered as we can. I'm going for a little bit crispier of a top on this one, and I don't care to put a whole lot of extra garnishments on top. So I could do a little trick where I brush some melted butter on there and season the tops. But, like I said, I don't necessarily need to do that today. So, instead, the moisture that I want to keep in is the sour cream. So I'm just going to put a little bitty piece on the board there. That way it kind of bakes off a little bit to keep the area just a little moist. And I'm going to cover it as much as I can And I'm going to try and crimp it in as much as I can. It doesn't need to be 100% involved. It doesn't need to be all the way trapped in. But trap it in a decent amount at the very least. And after that, all you do is you go into the oven. And there he goes. He's going to be in there probably about 20-ish minutes. So that's about how long I like to take it in order to get everything all melty and gooey and such. You don't have to cook it that long. You can just warm it. And honestly, if you're in a super rush or your kids are, deathly hungry, then you can just eat it as it is. Cut it up into its sandwiches and it's good to go. But until it's ready from cooking, this video is going to be paused. Alright everybody, we are back from that brief intermission when it was cooking. Like I said, it's been in there about 20 minutes or so. So, the big reveal. Da, 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 da. All nice and can't really hear it, but nice crispy tops. So now we just cut it straight down, kind of rock the blade back and forth a little bit. That way you don't have to worry about tearing all of the meat and such. Just kind of rock it back and forth a little. And you can cut these however you want. I'm cutting them into, well, first half of course, and then into threes. And then, you can get wild with it. These ones are triple sections. And these ones are double sections, because why not? So, we get a nice little close-up of it. Nice cross-section. And, like I said, this was about a $10 meal. And depending on how much you eat, this can feed anywhere from a couple to 4 or so people. So, that was baked sliders, and this has been another episode of Eatin Cheap. Remember, if you like what you see, if you want to see other videos that I've got on cooking or on gaming or just some other random stuff that I've got, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the like button. It helps with the algorithm to pop me up on more people's feeds faster. And I'll see you next time on Eatin Cheap.